and welcome to Possibilities, the show where we give people living with a variety of different abilities and their loved ones a space to share their lives with the world. Thank you for joining us today, and here's your host, Danny Steeves.
Thank you, Andy, and welcome to a very special edition of Possibilities. Um, as you can see right off the top of my, right off the top of the show, I'm not alone. I, I actually have a co-host today. Um, if you're watching this on YouTube, you would recognize her. Um, uh, Jessica, Jessica Geboers has been on the show twice, I guess. So I'm really happy to welcome her into the co-host seat. And today we don't have a partic- particular guest on the show, but we thought as um as co-hosts we'll just have a conversation with each other. So that's what we're gonna do, and we'll see what comes out. So we apologize if um it gets a little long, but we'll see what comes up. Anyway, welcome to the co-host, Jeff.
Thanks, Danny. It's good to be here.
Yeah, Um, great to have you here. Um, uh, first is it first is it different co-hosting and then being a guest on the show, or is it? Uh, do you think it's gonna be the same?
I think I'll have to let you know after I've done it, maybe after this episode, but I imagine it'll be kind of similar. You know me, I can, I'm pretty comfortable and can talk about pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So I think it'll go well. I also want to apologize just to our listeners and possibly to myself when I try to edit this later. There is a little bit of construction going on out front of my apartment, and I was hoping they'd be done by now. But if you hear anything, it's just because
No
of that.
problem. And for those people who are listening to us on Spotify, um, Jeff, I'm in my studio and Jeff is in her studio. My studio is in New Newstead, Ontario, and her studio is in in Toronto, Ontario, or just outside of Toronto, I think. Yes.
I'm in Toronto today.
Yeah.
Toronto today, yeah, I'm in Toronto at my apartment, just downtown near Greektown.
Uh, yeah. Um. So, um, getting getting on with the show here. Uh, Jeff and I have known each other for oh gosh, I would say I'm not good with numbers yet, but I would say
Maybe
about
5 years.
6 years, maybe.
Yeah, five or 6 years now, I think.
Yeah. And we'll tell you more about that in a minute. But um, Jeff, I thought we might start by sharing a bit, a bit more of how we got to know each other and how we, how I asked you to be on the production team. How does that
Mhm.
sound? Um,
Sounds great.
uh, do you want to take it away or should I?
I think you should lead it for now, and I'll jump in where I feel appropriate.
Yeah, okay, well, Jeff and I met 5 or 6 years ago, like we said it, and we both serve on the CP Net Committee out of Hamilton, Ontario. Um, and CP Net is really a, a connection of, maybe I'll hand it over to you, Jeff, to explain what CP Net
Uh,
is.
CPNet is a network of research and hospitals and yes, it's a network of universities, hospitals, rehab centers, clinicians, and just a number of people who are all involved in the research about and care of people with cerebral palsy. And we all sort of get together to share our resources and experiences. There's also, as you can probably imagine from Danny and I sitting here before you as two people with CP, in addition to intellectuals, researchers, scientists, clinicians, it's also a network of it also includes a network of people with cerebral palsy, as well as their family and caregivers. And so we all kind of get together to work on a variety of research and awareness projects, as well as just to sort of get to know each other and share our experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, um, I have to be honest with, our viewers here because when, when I first joined, I wasn't sure about joining because I wasn't sure if that was really my area of expertise, but I think I'm getting more comfortable as time goes on. Um, but it's really what would you say is the biggest eye opening eye opener being on that committee? Just
I would say, given that I joined probably just over 6 years ago, when I first joined, I didn't really know much about the research process, how they
mm,
came to decide what to do research on, and the process of developing a question and going about finding results, and the processes involved in getting ethics approval and finding participants, and gathering that result, answering that question, as well as how then do we share this information with the public, which I think is something that CPNet is quite good at, and in the best way is always looking to improve. I think that's one of the reasons that you and I get along with them so well. But definitely that figuring out that research process and all that goes into it, that it's equally not as complicated or as easy or as simple as I originally thought it was. Um,
No, me
I think
neither.
now I'm a lot more sympathetic to researchers. You know
Yeah,
me, I still tell them exactly what I think, but I have a better understanding of what they're trying to do and what they're working with, and how things came to be. So
yeah, and I'm, I, even though I'm in a pretty much in the same boat as you are in terms of my time spent on keeping it. I really struggle with the research aspect, and I'm I'm like, so what what the heck are we trying to look out of this? Like sometimes it's like um it goes over my head a bit, so I'm really um not not sure about something sometimes, and not sure about things sometimes, but I do my best. Yeah, yeah,
I would
and
say I think based on our conversations, I think what you and I sometimes wish is that we could maybe drop a little bit of the scientific approach and embrace a little bit more of a journalistic approach, which is is equally as wide reaching, or can be if done properly, but is a little bit quicker on the results. You want to know something, you want to talk to people, well, you just like pick up the phone and ask, or write an email and ask, and then much more quickly, maybe within a couple of hours or a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, you talk to people on the regular and you get answers. And that's what the researchers are doing as well, but there's a lot more steps involved, and there's approval, and like I said, there's ethics and
yeah,
and that kind of thing, and analysis, and sometimes the use of scientific equipment and things like that, where I think the longer that we've done it, the more we come to understand that. But I think you and I at our core are more like we're more journalistically minded, where if we want to know something, we're just gonna like ask people, ask whoever we think might have an answer who wants to talk to us, and call
yeah,
it a day, right?
yeah. Who who cares? I better be careful because I know some of the co um co what you call it, co
Co investigators.
yeah, investigators uh listen to this show, so we we gotta be careful with what we say here, but uh, sometimes you're right, sometimes you and I are like, who gives a who gives a crap about the ethics, and we'll, we'll just we'll just sit down with those people and see what comes out. But
Yeah.
anyway, uh, yeah, I'm getting a bit off topic here, but um, um, yeah, Jack and I have known each other for 6 years now, and I really appreciate her um expertise, and um about five um uh like about two 2 months ago, would you say? Yes, I am actually to be part of my production team. So on that note, I'm I'm curious. What why did you say yes to being part of the team?
I said yes because it gave me an opportunity to sort of practice some of my journalism school skills that I haven't maybe used in a while, because when I graduated I sort of stepped away from journalism and more into, communications and web development and developing resources and courses for people with disabilities and their families. So this opportunity working with you on the show, on your production team, gave me an opportunity to sort of put that journalistic hat kind of back on and practice my editing skills, which I still think are, getting better over time, but that's sort of the point. And
Agree.
I really like your show and the way that you just sort of talk about things that you feel need to be talked about, and it can be like serious or a little bit more fun or whatever. I just really liked what you're doing with this platform, and I wanted to be a part of it. So
Agree. Yeah. Um. And um. I'm I'm sure grateful to have you on the team because you you open a a huge amount of um doors here because you handle my editing, like you said, and and you put it on YouTube and all that jazz for me. So I'm
for
really,
figuring out the podcasting side of things, which is kind of fun.
yeah,
um yeah, so I think we just our skills and our mindsets, our opinions and such,
yeah.
just sort of complement each other.
So, um, so, um, eh, yeah, I agree because if you want, again, if you're listening to us on smaller 5 weeks, honestly, it's probably better for this particular particular episode. Um, uh, but if you're listening to this on Spotify right now, you are probably wondering why the heck is he starting on episode 20, uh, 22? Where is episode 21 or no, where's episode 1? And that is because um my my area of expertise is only on YouTube, and I when I pitched the idea for my podcast version for the the for the show, my production team, um, Jack and Mark, um, will will talk about Mark later. Sure, but it's um, for right now, Jack has really taken over the editing process and um, put me on Spotify, so that's why my show only starts on episode 21 or whatever. it goes on smaller side, but if you are interested, you can go over to my YouTube channel and uh, start from the very beginning. But uh, um, yeah, but anyway, I um before we completely run out of time, I do want to get your get your opinion on some um disabilities stories, just because that's what we're here to do. And um so far we've been talking about ourselves, and that's not what our audience is here for. So, um, my 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 first question to you is, uh, my first topic is patient, uh, patient and um, patient and youth research, which we we are in the middle of right now. Um, uh, why do you think that is so so important? Uh, um, yeah, why do you think that is so important?
Patient engagement in research is crucial. It's one of the reasons why like I mentioned earlier, it's one of the reasons why I so respect and enjoy being a part of CPNet and CanChild by extension. CPNet is the CP specific arm of it, but it's also part of a larger research network called CanChild. And part of the reason why I'm so excited to find them and get involved, so many years ago, was because they did really try to focus on and include the patient perspective. It leads back to that, sort of tagline that we use, and I've noticed it catching on other places, but that whole nothing about us without us, you know.
Yeah,
If you want to find out about people with disabilities and their perspective, or kids with disabilities and their perspective, or
well,
families of people with disabilities and their perspective, you should ask us, right? We're the ones who live it. We're the ones who will be able to tell you, um, you know, what's up, what we experience every day. And it's a little bit different for each of us, but that's part of the reason why it's so important to get our to engage us in research and engage younger generations in research too, because I'm getting past that young adult age, but it's so important
so,
to include
so
us.
am I really.
But if you want to know what our experiences are and how we think and how we feel, and what kind of research or interventions, medicines, therapy, programs, whatever that we need or is going to help us, or maybe isn't, it's nice, like you tried but it isn't quite working out the way they thought it was going to, we're the best people to ask,
Yeah,
right? So that is why patient engagement is so important. It really dictates and informs the research, and therefore the future of medicine and programming, and that kind of thing, which all sounds really heavy, but it's really not once you get into it. You sort of get talking and realize how it applies to your everyday life.
yeah, because I bet that people watching or listening to this right now are like, what the heck are they talking about? Yeah, yeah,
Well, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the concept or the idea of research. Like it sounds very academic and sort of like, oh, I couldn't do that. But really all it is like talking to people and investigating, seeing what's out there, learning from people's perspective,
yeah,
learning and building on what already exists, and looking for ways to, a find a problem,
yeah,
and b looking for ways to solve it, right?
yeah, yeah,
And yes, part of it is, looking through existing paperwork and books and all that kind of geeky stuff that you and I do love in our own way. But a big part of it too is like we're doing right now, just talking to each other, talking to people, finding out about, I'll keep it sounds redundant, but I'll keep saying it because it's just so true, of like finding out, the good and bad of people's experiences, and sort of learning what needs to change, what works and what hasn't, and like building on that, all of that
yeah,
informs experience, that informs future medicine, future programs, future policy. If if we want to get big and talk government, and for people with disabilities, that is a ever changing, ever evolving, ever necessary arm of things.
mm-hmm. I agree, wholeheartedly. But I'm curious, what, what, if, what, if one of our CPNet members are listening to us right now and, um, are, are thinking to us themselves, like, are they gonna tell us how to change something? Um, what would your message be to uh, um the higher up people, if you will, if they are um if they are listening to this or wanting more clarification on how to um, adapt that to what we want to see. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
I think the core part of my message, the first part of my message would be, keep up the good work. They've always done great at, sort of doing from like the bottom up sort of research, and by that I mean like by talking to and including people with disabilities and families of people with disabilities to sort of inform their research questions. But what we've been sort of talking about more recently in some of our group meetings and the youth engagement and research meetings, which you'll remember, Danny, too, is the importance of making those materials and those conversations and those meetings, those things that we do to engage with youth with disabilities. It's so important that those things be accessible,
mm,
and being willing to collect information and experiences, communicate in a variety of different ways, whether that
yeah,
be verbally like you and I often do, or in writing, or with alternative communication methods, whether it be, computers or sign language, or however people communicate, um, written in a video, whatever. Be open to making sure that all of that is accessible. The way we collect information and have conversations is accessible. The materials that we put out, I'm very passionate about document accessibility, right? Making sure
yeah,
things are you know coded properly for screen readers, or that videos have captions and things like that, which is something started adding to your videos as well. Again, work in progress, but I really do try. I think it's important. Transcripts and creating, if you provide written material,
yeah,
make sure it's accessible for screen readers. Maybe make sure it's possible to increase the text size, or the website is, all the images have alt text, and you can increase the text size and all of those little things. And also just to be willing to say, like, this is the type of information that we have, or the type of questions that we have for you. Is there anything that we can do to make that easier or more accessible for you? Right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's so important because a, a lot of it, and maybe this is a show that you and I can talk about in the future once we get in our production mode again. But maybe we need um to talk to those people in the research sector and say, this is what we need, this is what we want to see, how can we make this happen? Because you're right, this is not a problem that is not, this is a problem that will only increase. So I think we do need to talk more about this. So you're right. So I I wanted to bring another topic to the table quickly because I I thought it was an interesting um, scenario, um, it, and that is the topic of um, people people with disabilities uh, finding employment. Yes, and you and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, on and off camera. I think we uh, I think we talked about it on both shows that you were on before, but we're talking about it now again. But with a bit of a twist. Um, First of all, why do you think it's important for people to people in the workforce to have someone with a disability working for them, and and why isn't there more of it? I guess.
Well, this is just my perspective. Someone else may agree or disagree, as I've often said to Danny in the past. And I think you're right. We do talk about it a lot amongst ourselves, and we've talked about it on the show before, and we likely will again with like a more focused lens in the future. But I don't think it's one of those things that really can get old until there's a lot of, big notable change. But why is it important that, we're in the workforce? Why is it important that someone has, people with disabilities on their staff in their workplace? I think one of the many reasons is that we bring a different perspective, right?
Hmm.
We bring that lived perspective. I often lately work in communications and building websites and that kind of thing. And with I bring my life experience and the experience of close friends of mine
Yeah.
to that, and I'll say,
Yeah.
this is why it's important that your website be accessible, and this is some things that we can do to to make it more accessible. And I can explain firsthand why, doing things a bit differently is to the benefit of that employer or the organization, and it's not such a big scary thing, right? I
Yeah.
bring that knowledge and that experience with me to say, like, this is why it's important, this is what we can do about it. And through those conversations, I generally those around me who maybe previously didn't understand that, those barriers, or that experience that people with disabilities have was a real thing, or that it's much more easily remedied than they initially thought. So
yeah,
A, that it's important, and B, that it can be solved.
yeah,
um so I think that's definitely a big thing that we bring, is that lived experience, that lens, right? Um and, and the other thing is that there's a lot of people with disability, some degree of disability in the world, and now that people are going to live longer, even people who are not disabled now may be disabled in the future, ever
mhm,
increasing
yeah,
the
yeah,
population of people with disabilities, right?
yeah,
So it's just a really vast, untapped workforce,
yeah,
right?
and
And the more we can participate and the more we can contribute and provide for ourselves, the easier it'll be on everyone. Um, you know, why
and
not
I,
include us?
yeah, and I'm almost hesitant to bring this up because I don't want to get into uh, too much trouble here, but but I will because I want your opinion on it. And I think the audience would be interested in this in this statistic as well. And that is, I was doing some research and I found that um, the person that I was talking to, and I'm gonna cover my butt here and not mention his name on camera, but he he was saying that over it is harder not it is harder to find a a job when you have when you have a disability and you're female and and, and, and I'm just using that in your case, just it's harder to find a job when you're a disability when you have a disability and you 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 are a person of color. Do you think that is true or not?
I would definitely, I like I said, I don't have any like research or facts
No,
on that at the moment. But I would definitely just like off the cuff with a little bit of like armchair expert observation and reason, I would definitely think that it would be more difficult, right? Because in terms of, that's like a triple minority, right? You're a person with disability, you're female. Although females are less minorities than they once were, but they've been,
sure,
you know,
sure,
historically discriminated against in the workplace for a long time. And then, there's the whole equal pay issue, right, between men and women, or lack thereof, I should say. And then if you were to add in, being a person of color, that is, that's three levels of adversity right there.
and,
That's three levels of difference.
yeah, and that goes for the male perspective as well, doesn't it? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And
Hmm.
um, anyway, uh, for the last little bit here, um, well, I don't know how much time we have left, but we'll see. But my last um my last topic, and then I want to hear from you, is because I was watching a a a video before we came on the air about with our esteemed CP net colleague, young Willem Gordon, and he was he was saying that something about uh, we we need to and I forget his exact words, but something like we need to um get get used to um having disabilities in the world, because um that is only only gonna um grow. But what he said was really interesting, because he said one um people people once you once you graduate from from um from once you graduate from the child um uh, uh end of things, that um you really put on the back burner, if you will. Do you think that is true or not?
I do definitely think that's true, and I've had a number of conversations and continue to do some work, advisory work with Dr. Wilhelm Gorter on this topic, particularly transitioning from the pediatric to adult medical system, but also as far it also applies to other types of services and that are available to kids and then adults or lack thereof, with disabilities and that kind of thing. When we're kids, there's a lot open to us. There's a whole system that has its flaws and has its difficulties, but if you're able to get into it, you're sort of funneled along the whole way, right? You get diagnosed, you get hooked up with the right team of doctors, you get into a physio or rehab center like Grandview or Boardview, and
Yeah,
and and everyone just and you have a whole team of people around you, a whole team of experts, and you just sort of grow up in that system, receiving the care as you go. And like I said, it's not 100% perfect, and we'll always advocate and continue to work to improve that. But there is that system that sort of follows you along and helps you as much as it can
uh-huh,
until you turn 18, 21, maybe even 25, depending on where you live or what services you need or what physio center you're a part of. There's that whole system, and the idea is to help us along and set us up for the best quality of life possible. And that's a great way to look at it. It does,
yeah,
we definitely need that serious care um early in life. But as Danny, you and I have talked about, and I've talked to a number of people at Can Child about, and so have you. Uh, just because we turn 21 doesn't mean we stop having CP or some other,
no,
disability,
no,
right?
no,
And but the system isn't really set up like that. You're meant to
yeah,
sort of graduate, and then they might give you a pamphlet or
eh,
some kind of service recommendation, and good luck, right?
yeah,
Especially if you are sort of high functioning, like me, for instance. I don't need a lot of really obvious care. My condition is very stable.
no,
I have moderate CP, but I am pretty independent,
yeah,
right? I don't have anything like
and,
quote unquote serious.
yeah, and that's what and that's what Dr. Gordon was saying is that um he was saying that to the doctors who 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 treat people with um CP is that CP doesn't necessarily go away um when you're 18. It, it doesn't magically go away. So the Dr. Gordon was saying that we need to be ready for that to happen way before that happens. Otherwise, we, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, he was saying you need to have that conversation before you need it. Otherwise, you are absolutely stuck when it comes to um, having your care effort. Would you agree with that statement?
Definitely. I do think that it's an ongoing conversation, probably from like the age of 14. And in the same kind of like 12, 13, 14, at various levels depending on, cognitive understanding and life circumstances. But it's just like on some level, it's just like how you would teach any you know, teenager how to start thinking about taking care of themselves. When you're a kid, you have parents and caregivers, guardians that sort of take care of things and remind you when your doctor's appointment is and when you need to go to the dentist and when you need to buy new clothes and those types of things. And if you have a disability, then you have all those same things as your non-disabled peer, but then you also have to worry about going to get your physicals and check in with your various specialists and go to your physio so that you can maintain or improve your mobility, um, from what it is, and that you need to, as you grow or things wear out, that you need to like replace your equipment. Like the process of buying a new wheelchair as an adult is quite complicated,
Yeah,
and I know for me it was kind of challenging because I'm a part-time walker, part-time wheelie, probably more of a walker than I am a wheelchair user. But because of that, I'm pretty light on my equipment and I can use it for a long time. So I got a new one when I turned 18, and then I didn't need or just before I turned 18, like I think I was 17, I started the process for like funding purposes and that kind of thing. And then I didn't need another one for about 10 years. So I was almost 30 when I was like, but wait, I'd never thought really, and we never really talked about how to go about buying a new wheelchair, like filling out the paperwork, getting the funding,
yeah,
figuring out which part I have to pay for, which part the government's going to pay for. How, where do I go to get it? How do I get my measurements? Like all those types of things, right?
yeah,
And then
yeah,
there's, I also, when I graduated from physio, I was like, yay, I don't have to do physio, because like no one really likes physio when they're a kid. But after about like 4 years, maybe even less, probably like 3 years, I was
yeah,
like, hey, I'm starting to notice that I'm not as resilient as I used to be, and physio might be useful. But then there was this whole process of like finding a physio as an adult, right?
yeah,
Because not all of the adult physios know about cerebral palsy. They're like, wait, you don't have a sports injury? Like,
yeah,
excuse me, while I Google it. And like everyone's well intentioned, but
yeah,
and like I said earlier, because I'm pretty lucky in that I don't have a lot of medical issues, I was just kind of on my own. And everyone's really well intentioned, but you can kind of feel like you're just like out to sea.
yeah,
And you're part of a minority, so there's not a lot of people around or a lot of like readily available resources. Like there's no user manual or guide that says like how to be an adult with a disability, although that's a book idea.
yeah, yeah, and one more, um, actually two more, questions on this, um, um, topic. Um, uh, why do you think, um, uh, P- pedi- pediatric doctors are um, so, uh, let me rephrase that. Do you, do you think, um, uh, do you think people with disabilities who are in pediatrics, do you think they get better care than adults do, or what's your opinion on that?
I think I'm not sure on like the quality of like once you're in care, the quality on like the case by case basis. However,
Yeah,
I overall they probably receive better care because, like I said, you have that whole system that sort of exists. It's flawed, but it exists to sort of guide you and set you up for your like best quality of life, right? And it's
yeah,
very, obviously kids, they're very vulnerable and they need people to look out for them, and by extension, things are caught and things are taken care of, where when you're an adult, it's much easier to sort of let things slide because you don't really know who to ask, or maybe you only go to the doctor twice a year. You know what I mean? Like things can sort of get lost because in my experience and the experience
yeah,
of many people that we know, we have less of that team around us to be like, hey, like this seems a little bit odd, what do you think? Or to have that doctor be like, has it always been like that? Like what, like, you know where when you're older you're like, well, again, I will see the doctor soonish, maybe if it's still a thing in like 3 months when I go for my checkup, I'll mention it, and then maybe it slips your mind, or it's like better on that happens to me a lot. I'm like, I need to make an appointment, I have this issue, and then by the time I get to the doctor, whether it be like a few weeks or a couple of months later, the issue is not super an issue on that day, so I think it's fine, and
yeah,
then makes a magical reappearance later.
yeah,
um
yeah,
and so I think probably the fairest way to say it is that there's definitely appears to be a lower quality or standard of care with adults because it is so disjointed, where especially for people with disabilities, the pediatric care is much more of like a team
yeah.
effort, right?
And and going off of that, I think that the specialist, the specialist who specialize in disabilities are much more equipped to handle disabilities than the, the other family doctors. Would you agree with that statement?
I would. And again, I don't think it's for lack of care, but I definitely think that the specialists, like I remember my surgeon, for obvious reasons, would know a lot more about my CP than say my family doctor. Family doctors by very nature has to be very broad, right? It's called a general practitioner for a reason. But the issue with that is that often those doctors, especially when you get older, your general practitioner is your gateway to that specialist, right? So if they don't really understand the disability or the issue that you're trying to present to them, that often we don't necessarily understand either.
Yeah,
Sometimes we do, sometimes we
yeah.
don't. It depends on the day, and the situation, right? If no one is 100% understanding the situation because maybe it's never happened before, or you're like one of three of the hundreds of patients that they have who has CP, they don't see it very often, and therefore they don't really understand it, and then you might get sent to the wrong specialist. um I've had that happen before, and it was not anything ill intended. Everything was with the best of intentions, but it can take a lot longer, especially in the Canadian healthcare system, as great as it is. That you get to one specialist, and you had to wait to get there because there's a wait list, and then you find out like, oh no, you would have been better off to go to this doctor over here, right?
um,
And like I said, we just inherently have more of a focus on pediatric care, which I like I said, I understand, is where they started doing their research, because you're often born with cerebral palsy, for
yeah,
example, right? So like, what are we gonna do to improve the quality of life of these kids? And so like that's all really well intentioned, but now they're doing such a great job that it sounds a little glib, but sometimes I say to get the researchers to pay attention. Sometimes I'll say, well, you've all done such a great job that now we're not dying. We're living to adulthood. Now we need to maybe refocus a little bit or expand our focus. We work so hard to get these kids to live and have good quality of lives, but now they're adults, and what are we're just kind of dropping the ball, right?
yeah.
So I think it will change over time. It's just a real slow go, and you have to get people to sort of get on board.
And that is that is what I appreciate about uh, Dr. Um, Young, Dr. Gordon's practice is because he's part of this newer field called podiatrics, podiatrists, whatever that big long word is. And
Mm.
um, I have that same same doctor as well, not Doctor Moore, but Doctor Cassidy. So yeah, but anyway, that's what I appreciate about those people because the podiatrist really looks at you as a whole and sees sees you as a person. And if you come to them with a certain issue, they will send you to a specialist. So what that is what I really appreciate about providing trust, and I hope it becomes more popular in the future.
Me too. I've actually had a few conversations with people recently about podiatrists and how I probably need to get one. If anything, and transition is very complicated, but it just occurred to me now that maybe that's one of the things that we need to hook people up with when they start to age out of the pediatric system. Maybe everyone needs one of the, like, here's your referral to a physiatrist, and like, welcome to adulthood, here's the first step. Instead of just sort of being left out on your own, often,
Uh-huh.
sometimes,
And,
if you're lucky, you can transition from one system or one hospital or one rehab center to another, but not always. In my case, I graduated from Grandview and then moved away to school. Like, I went to college and university, so I moved to a whole new city and sort of had to start again. Um, and that can be really discombobulating, right? So maybe that's what we need to do. But when you were talking, one of the things that came to mind that I appreciated is that you said they see us as a whole, right? We're a whole person with a variety of issues, disabilities, life circumstances, right? One of the and you and I probably had this discussion before too, but especially when you start to transition, your your disability is pretty much what it is, and you can improve certain things and learn new skills and things to improve things, areas here and there. But, you know, doctors often want to cure something. That's the very nature of what they do. But CP, for example, can't really be cured, right?
yeah,
So I like that idea of, like, seeing us as our whole, as one of the reasons why I like my physiotherapist so much, is that, she has her opinions and things that she can do to help me, and has opinions about what I can do better, but ultimately she's not trying to, like, cure my CP. And, she cares about what activities I do in my life, and we work together to try to, you know be realistic about
and, and
things.
again, and again, I really appreciate podiatrists because they look at you as a whole, and then if there's something wrong with you that they can't treat themselves, you they refer you to a specialist who is specifically um, used to um, having patients with that particular issue. So that is something that I would like to see in the future happen more often. And and um, if if people are interested in um, finding out more about podiatrists, maybe uh, that would be a good show for us to do in the future.
I was just thinking that we should do some research and maybe find a doctor who has a history or background in disability,
Yeah,
um, specifically. There's
yeah,
probably some around, sick kids, and that comes to mind. So
yeah,
we should look
um,
at that in the future.
yeah. So we're uh, we're running a bit short on time here, but um, before we go, did you have anything on your list that you wanted to bring up?
Not at the moment. I think we covered a lot of good ground. You know me, I'm always good to bring up something to do with employment, but you got there for me, which I really appreciated. And I'll just store some of my other thoughts away for future episodes.
All right, so if uh, because I'm sure this is not gonna be our last one because um because I like this format, so I'm sure we'll do this again. So
Definitely.
um okay, audience, if if you want to get in touch with um us us here at possibilities, our email addresses um possibilitieshow@gmail.com, and um we try to um put on an episode once a month, but I know that we haven't been too persistent at it, but we'll try to get better at it between the two of us. Um, um, we'll try to uh, get more content out there. So if you have any ideas for us to investigate, please get into contact with us. Once again, our email address is possibilitiesshow@gmail.com, and as we always say, keep the gifts out of disabilities, and we'll see you next time. Or I will see you next time for sure. I don't know about Jeff, but she'll be back in more episodes in the future. So we will see you next time. Bye for now.